Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Northwest Fishing Live podcast. Tonight, Todd and I have two special guests joining us. We've got Leonard Krug, the president of the Oregon Anglers Alliance, and Stan Steele, or Stan Steele, I believe.
Steele will work.
All right. One of the board members of the Oregon Anglers Alliance. So thank you very much for joining us tonight, guys. If you don't mind, can you both give us a quick introduction of who you are?
Sure.
Lead it off, President Leonard.
Very good. My name's Leonard Krug. I'm the president of the Oregon Anglers Alliance. And the Oregon Anglers Alliance has been in existence for just about 2.5 years now. We are a collective group of people that we kept running into each other at, say, commission meetings, Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife commission meetings, and kind of working behind the scenes to try and ensure that our traditional model of conservation was being followed in regard to our fisheries. And we put this Oregon Anglers Alliance organization together. Membership is free. And I've got to say, people really flocked to this because, as we were just speaking before we began, Todd was saying it takes a collective group to make a difference. We've all got to be together on it. And well, that's enough for me for now. I'd like to say that Stan Steele, or Steely Stan, as Stephen just called him, is really one of our most outspoken board members and really brings a great voice to the table. So, Stan.
Thank you, Leonard. I grew up on the McKenzie. I've been an angler, hunter, trapper my whole life. My dad was Steele, the wood boat builder, and which is what Willie boats are actually designed after, in the drift boats, and started my professional career after graduating from high school. A little bit of time with Uncle Sam, the Oregon State Police and Fish and Wildlife Trooper. After 25 years there, I went back to roots and became a guide. Did that for 12 years and realized all through this process that our fisheries and our hunting capabilities and our trapping opportunities were diminishing. You just watch it. They were just being down in a downward spiral. And so I got involved in a lot of the fisheries management issues in the legislature. And now I'm working with unpaid, because I really don't want to be paid. The payday that I get is when I have a good steelhead on the end of the rod, or I see a good buck out in the ridge or whatever. So this is all about getting people together, recapturing a narrative. And so with that, I'll just let it go, because I can talk about this for hours, because it is our passion.
Well, hopefully we can have at least an hour and a half conversation tonight with you guys. So can one of you give us like a little bit more info on the Oregon Anglers Alliance? I know that it's a free membership right now that people can join, but what's your guys' mission? What are you guys working on?
Our mission is to, like I said, to ensure that our fisheries follow a traditional model of conservation. And that comes down in Oregon, well, every state, comes down to harvest, basically. Sustainable harvest, though. And as you can see, as of late, some of our hatchery programs have really been jeopardized. They've been restricted or eliminated, quite needlessly. One of the discussions we were just having on Saturday that keeps reoccurring is that some of our fisheries management needs to have a risk reward profile attached to it. In other words, how much risk is there for the benefit that these programs give us? And I mean, these are reoccurring situations. And looking back at the recent North Umpqua summer steelhead hatchery program that got voted on by the commission to be eliminated because there was deemed to be some kind of risk there by someone. Anyway, that's a prime example of the path we've been going down here. It seems to be a changing culture within our state agency, and we're trying to wake some people up, and I think we've been doing that along with a lot of people's help. And I don't want to blow the Oregon Anglers Alliance horn too much, But something that separates us from other groups is we have a science review panel team of both working and retired scientists. Many of them retired from ODFW, some from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, some from the National Forensics Lab. A very, very diverse, very bright group of people who are, and they're unpaid also. They're only here because they want to do the right thing and try to right the ship. So that's enough for me. Stan, your turn.
Let me, if you don't mind, Leonard, if I could jump in
Sure.
here real quick. You know, the level and amount of expertise that you guys have within your group, are any of the other groups reaching? You know, as far as I know, and I could be completely wrong and off base on this, but are there any other groups that are reaching out to your group to help them with the struggles that they're having? You know, because everybody has different, they're all fighting a different fight somewhere, right? You know, in their local regions. Is that something that you guys would accept, I guess? You know, do they, you know, the coming together, you know, say I wanted to change Coal River's, you know, wanted to get into that hatchery and change something. You know, if I was another group, you know, is that something I could come to you guys for and say, hey, how do I navigate this, you know, this arena? Because, you know, I'm just a fishing guide. I don't know I don't know the politics that go into, everybody has a boss, right? You know, the biologist, everybody wants to blame name biologists for everything bad that's going on, but never turn around and see him in a store and shake his hand and say, hey, thank you for what he or she perceives to be the good. You know, I mean, do you think there's some value to that of, you know, agencies helping agencies, I guess?
Well, there's absolutely no question that is the value of having a network. And Coal Rivers, it's interesting you brought that up, is right now Coal Rivers is under massive scrutiny for basically a infrastructure failure that's was predictable and has actually been going on for years. And so there was really quite an effort in that Southern Oregon region to bring that to both at the congressional level. Steve Byerland is a name that just stands out, just a champion of that situation down there. And so, you know, the Alliance and the South Coast Anglers and all of these groups realized, hey, we have to come together on this and have a big fight, a big push, not necessarily a fight, a push to put emphasis in ODFW on this, because we're losing half of our run here and half of our run there to a hatchery malfunction. And so the networking is the key thing. So when we have a small organization, such as the LC Sportsman's Alliance, which is, you know, or the Sleds Anglers or whatever, what we want to do is make sure that we work together on issues. And so we're here for them. And, you know, it's anglers for anglers.
Absolutely.
And commercial fishermen are involved. And there's a reason they are. Because when we start talking abundance, we're not worrying about allocation.
Right.
Without abundance, allocation will always be the divider. And so what we're trying to say is, let's get past this divisiveness in our community and let's get together. Yeah. Anglers for anglers.
For sure.
Yep. Well said, Stan. And we have cooperative agreements with many organizations. And whenever we've never turned anybody down yet when they've come to us with a problem, although there's not enough of us, there's a lot more, you know, but what we'd like to do is take somebody that says we need help. We'd like to kind of, if they know about the problem, we'd like to make them the lead, and we try to plug in some people to be supportive of that. Or we as a group, our board and officers, and maybe our science review panel can support them in that. But,
right. Well, and you know, because it is hard, you know, we live in an instant gratification. A minute later, you're going to get a text, hey, why you call screening? You know, I mean, it's the people want, and they don't realize, you know, the amount of time that it takes to do this stuff. You know, I mean, it's not something that's going to happen tomorrow. I mean, it literally is the long game. What we're doing now, we hope to change things in 4 to 5 years. I mean, it's the timeline of everything is just, at a snail's pace. And we're not used to that in society right now. We want it right. I want 100,000 fish coming back tomorrow. And it's just not the case. It takes time. Policies have to be changed. And to get people to understand that is the other battle that I think we're fighting. I'm really passionate about it right here, right now. Tomorrow, midday, maybe not so passionate. I mean, that's literally how we see it going. During a meeting, everybody's fired up, everybody's gung ho, and then all of a sudden, you don't remember what commitment means. I go and speak to a lot of kids, and telling them it's doing what you said you would do long after the feeling in which you said it is left. That's commitment. It's getting people to understand that part of, and maybe it is just staying in front of them, a lot, and keeping that fire stoked. You mentioned fighting, just a little bit ago, Stan. And I mean, I know I feel like that. I feel like I'm having to fight for every inch that I gain in getting people the education it takes to open their mind to believe something other than what they've been told, or what they chose to latch on to. It's just because you want to latch onto it doesn't mean it's correct.
Todd, what you're talking about here is something, and I think sports, and where so many of our youth are involved in youth soccer or whatever it may be, basketball, football, or whatever it may be. And they're part of something there's called a team. And if one of those team members misses a block, or, balls hit hard at third base and it goes through the wickets, and you give up the 1 run or the 2 runs and all of that, your team doesn't put you down, but then you are going to have a burden on you to stay in the game and make yourself better to where you help the team. And that's what your example is really good is we can come very passionate at a meeting. We can gin up the letters, we can gin up the emails, but then all of a sudden that issue gets decided one way or the other. Everybody's happy if they win, everybody's pissed if they lose.
Right.
And so then they go on to the next cast or the next ball game. This is the long haul, long game. It's a marathon.
It is.
And I'm going to give you, it's called the Oregon Wildlife Coalition. Now that sounds good. And another one is the Legislative Wildlife Caucus. These are every anti-hunting and fishing group in Oregon that belong to these. Their net assets are $414 million. So we look at let's say the Healthy Sportsman Association, where we're lucky to see $8,000 to $15,000 in a bank account, and we usually spend that on getting a next fundraiser going.
Right. And
you say, how do you combat that political just behemoth? Well, you're going to do it through what you're really stressing tonight is becoming a part of something much bigger than just yourself.
Absolutely.
And that's it. I mean, like I said, I can talk for hours because I have been the one battling in the legislature along with some good allies, but we are so outmanned and outgunned that I am just surprised that we've been able to keep our nose above water.
Yeah. And I mean, that's literally, I'm not proud of this fact by any means. But, I mean, on all honesty, I was one of those guides that, hey, why the fishing's good? I'm making money. Fishing's good, man. And then I started to see, because I've only been a full-time guide for 7, 8 years, right around there. And the atrocities that I've seen in that short amount of time, and working inside my community, giving back, man, it really opened my eyes to, holy cow, this is not the, everybody wants to say renewable resource, and it's not. I mean, it is. I don't mean that it's not. It is a renewable resource. But what people fail to understand is, why I'm so passionate about the hatcheries is a couple things. It's a put and take fishery. It's there for us to take and harvest and feed our families, because there's something special about bringing a fish home to feed your family. It's empowering as an adult. But the other part too is we've changed the landscape so much that it's so unrealistic to think those wild fish are just going. Look at the logging that we've done on the riverbanks. Look at the development. You get up there on the Upper Rogue River, there's one lady, or cut down trees and got fined an absorbent amount of money, and it was no big deal. It was completely worth it because she's got the view that she wants and she's got enough money to pay the fine. I mean, literally, that's how ridiculous it is. And so we've impacted, we've impacted the resource so much that they have to have help. We have to help that fish. That hatcheries are our problem, because we've impacted it too much. It's where's everybody building their homes into the deer's wintering range. That's why there's no more mule deer, there's mule deer, but not like there was. We've impacted all that stuff. Removing dams it sounds really good on paper, but I'll say it, to be honest with you, the damage is done. How do we make better of the situation that we're in? Because you remove those dams, that silt's going to cut, all that years of silt, that's coming down. I mean, there's a whole list of problems that come with fixing that problem, so, I mean, it's just, and like I said, it's in the 7 years, I decided that, no, I'm done yelling at my buddies. I'm done yelling at somebody that don't understand it. When we decided to do this, it was our chance to, whether we make it or not, but at least I don't live my life in the world of try. I live my life in the world of you either did or you either do or you do not. That is, because I think when we try to do something, we've already given ourselves the easy out, because when it fails, I can look in the mirror and say, you know what, but I tried. Well, I don't try very well. And so, that's why we wanted to start this. And I applaud you guys for what you've done. The more I get into it and the more research we do to help organizations like yours. I mean, it makes me feel good that there's a lot of us out there with the same, like you said, anglers for anglers. There's a lot of us out there with the same frustrations. So definitely, thank you. I just wanted to say that. So.
Well, Leonard, weigh in, and me, I can get wound up, but guys, one of the things I want people to understand or trying to figure out, how did we get here, and how do we get out of it? And so a few years ago, I was coming back from the Portland Sports Show, and my brother and I are driving down I-5, and we're in that Portland congestion, and we look down ahead of us, and it is a solid line of red taillights going south, and a solid line of white lights going back. And I said, and you wonder why our fish are struggling? There's no question. We have altered the landscape. You're absolutely correct. Yeah. And tonight, just a few minutes ago, I was watching the first half of the Seattle and Denver game, and they had a great panoramic of the Seattle waterfront. And I mean, here's all these high rises and the Space Needle and all this stuff, and I'm saying, orcas aren't struggling because we've altered their habitat, are they? But yet now we want to take away a primary food source in hatchery fish. And what we have to look at there is, do you think an orca checks for a fin clip before he bites? In other words, if we don't put the prey out there, and we're capable of doing that, it is a fool's errand to think that we're going to recover these fisheries. It's just a fool's errand. And so, on hatcheries, yes, they have to be wisely utilized. Science is always going to be an evolving. Science is an art. We're going to have failures. We're going to have successes, but it's always going to be a debate of whether they're good or whether they're bad. But when we look at hatcheries, without them now, we do not fish. and we do not harvest.
I agree.
Yeah, Todd, here's an interesting observation. Speaking of hatcheries, I should preface this with, we don't believe we need a glut of hatchery fish in every stream, but we need to be able to identify where we can best use them and put in conservative, sustainable hatchery programs. We were just speaking of the South Coast Chetco River with its modest winter steelhead hatchery program. That's a great example of just giving our population a little boost. And by the way, that's the only winter steelhead program in the area. That's a supplementation program, that is.
Right.
But I was going to say, the Northwest Hatchery Research Group, 2009, spent years, Oregon brought in people, not just from Oregon, but all over the Northwest to put this best hatchery practices together. And they've established that if you use wild broodstock, primarily wild broodstock for a hatchery program, you can have an acceptable PHOS of, say, 30%. And we were speaking of the Elk River earlier today. That conservation plan dictates that those fish be held at a 30% PHOS rate. Now, we just finished crafting another conservation plan for the South Coast, but all those numbers are 10%, except where there's that little bit of hatchery presence on the Chetco, and that's allowed at 15% on only a small section of river. And those are the kind of questions we like to pose: why move the goalposts like that?
Right. And just for the viewers, would you explain what the PHOS level, what that term means, so they understand what you were just explaining, Leonard?
Yeah, that term was, help me out, Stan. What year was that term brought to light in Oregon Fisheries Management created? It was invented here.
I'm not sure the actual year. It's been there for decades now when we started the Oregon Coastal Coho Recovery Plan and all of that. Coho were our first real focus on the coast that we were looked at. And we had over harvested them, sometimes up to 80% of both our hatchery and inland wild production was harvested in our ocean and inland fisheries. So there was an overharvest component, but PHOS is simply the percentage of hatcheries on the spawning bands. And that's exactly what it is: percentage of hatchery origin fish on the spawning beds. And so how they monitor that is they will do stream counts, and from that is all fed into their models. And then out of that model, it regurgitates some data that then they say, okay, we are at this level of PHOS or whatever. But stray rates, how they calculate stray rates is another one of those moving goalpost type things that we're always arguing. How did you get that many fish up fibers when we only had 2 in the trap, and one of them was a hatchery, one of them was a wild? And you're saying we have a 50% stray rate, and you're basing that on 2 fish? That's scientifically data accurate? In other words,
right.
There's a lot of moving goalposts, and we're not saying our managers have been doing a horrible job. We're just saying that we now, as anglers, need to become more educated on terms like PHOS. Keep those people at the table that will question and will also congratulate when there's good things to say, but to make sure that our voices are being heard. So PHOS, if we could wave a magic wand and the anti-hatchery movement, we would have a major discussion about PHOS.
Right.
Is that the main limiting factor right now for how many smolts that they put into the streams?
It actually is one of the primaries. Yes, it is. Stray rate, you have to keep in our recovery policies and fish or management policies. Most generally, we have to stay below 10% PHOS on. And let's use the North Umpqua War is so fresh in everyone's mind out here. We had a trap there at Rock Creek Hatchery. The trap goes down, and of course it's inoperable. And where did those hatchery fish go? Now they were coming back to the hatchery, but there was no trap to collect them there. So what did they do? They swam on up into the upper Rock Creek, and then those were counted as strays. That is absolutely there's no way, and those are called hotspots in management. Hotspots cannot be utilized in calculating your stray rate or your PHOS. So that's the watchdog worthiness of having organizations out here that have a little bit of understanding and good technicians and good scientists on board that can say, wait a minute, when we look at PHOS and we see that situation, can't be utilized. And so those are the deep in the weeds stuff that I don't expect a guy out here casting his favorite jig to a steelhead to understand. But if he doesn't belong to a group that is willing to dig that deep and get into the weeds, well, he's probably going to make a lot of fishless casts.
Absolutely.
Back to that North Umpqua, one additional note, it didn't come out until the whole thing was pretty much over. But that fish trap hadn't been in operation for 3 years, I want to say. Why not is our question, because it's not a big expense item. And I think that's the first thing you'd hear. We don't have the money, but there's donors. There's Douglas County we would have chipped in. We'd have covered the cost for that if somebody just would have said, hey, we need some help here. The R&E funding for Oregon from our license sales, the language states explicitly that's the kind of things that funding is for exactly.
Well, and they have the tribe. The tribe is very active I go to the Umpqua Derby every year, and the tribe, funding, that's not a viable excuse I don't think to anybody. We call it bug and bubble season because, those salmon are spawning up river. I maybe see 10% spawning of what I seen when I first started guiding here. And so, is the answer the broodstock program, because that is wild fish bringing back wild, that they're raising, that way, because at some point with only 2,000 fish come back to spawn, you can only have 200, 10%, you can only have 200 hatchery fish. When that gets down to 100 wild fish, it's not going to take very long where that number, that hatchery is not going to be able to help out at all. That's the question is the broodstock program is how we beat this by raising those wild, new wild fish every year.
There's absolutely no question, Todd, that you're hitting on something that is an extremely important component of this overall conservation conversation. The Hatchery Scientific Review Group, congressionally mandated group of scientists to look at salmonid recovery in the Columbia River Basin. Now, what's going on in the Columbia River Basin is also very apropos to what's going on in our coastals. So when we look at what they come out with was, if we're using a wild broodstock, 1-to-1 parenting, both wild, that we can increase our PHOS, because we know that even though there has been some science that indicates, has not totally validated, but indicates hatcheries can have lessened fitness. Now that is still scientifically debatable. Whether that fitness actually has an impact that carries on after generation after generation. So what they've said is, one of the ways we can absolutely safeguard in that, a benefit risk, is to use wild parentage as our broodstock. And so at that point, we can raise that up to 30 and sometimes even 50% stray rate. We have what's called precautionary principles. This is the newest thing that we're hearing about. So all of our hatchery programs now are working under climate change policies and everything else that are, I call them many times just moving the goalpost on it, making it harder for us to show success in a program. And so all of this debate and discussion is where we have to have good scientists at the table. Ian Coulter or whatever it is, that just has done some great research out of his group. And we have some really qualified geneticists and others in ours. And they're looking at this and we're beginning to question some of the ideology. So what I would say to this, at least 50%, and hopefully up to 100%, but at least 50% of all of our hatchery outplants on our salmonids should come from wild parentage. We lessen the risk.
Gotcha.
So we have this data, it sounds like, that's come out. Is there a reason why it seems like, I don't know if it's necessarily ODFW not looking at it, or if it's the pressure from the groups that are suing them and the hatchery programs. Why does it seem like we're not implementing these wild broodstock programs everywhere that there is a hatchery, like Coal Rivers, for example, the North Umpqua? Why is that not the standard if it produces such a better product?
Leonard, you want to touch that?
Oh, I hate to get, this is getting so deep into the science. I wish some of our science panelists were actually here that are fisheries experts, although you're doing a great job, I might add. I lost my train of thought there for a minute. But, back to what Stan said, that Ian Corder, Garth Wyatt, who's the lead fisheries science person for PGE up north there. The writings of Carmen McDonald, they mirror, who is deceased now, but they mirror exactly what these papers are about. And Brad Halverson also, who's recently stepped down from the chair as the Oregon Hatchery Research Center. He's stepped up to do some writings and put out some publications also on these very subjects, and they support exactly what we're speaking of. But these are PhDs that clearly don't have any bias in the fight. They're not being paid by anyone to write these things, so they don't really have an agenda there to follow. It comes from their hearts and in their minds. So that's all I can say in our defense. You've probably seen the posting going around. I followed the science and I found the money. Oh, wait, right. I followed the money and I found the science. So you need to be very careful about what science you're following and who's putting the science on the table too, I might add.
Right.
And I think that's one of the key issues right now that we're trying to make sure is that we're on a level playing field. And right now we had a weekend meeting with ODFW's executive fisheries people, and one of the things that we brought up that we're concerned about is what's called the Oregon Coast Cooperative, or the Oregon Coast Recovery Plan. It was just signed. It's a $23 million partnership between the Wild Salmon Center and ODFW and several of the tribes. But when we read through that, we started the red flags. The first, in the executive summary of that $23 million document announcing the $23 million agreement was hatcheries are bad. So you go in with a bias just immediately. And so if you have built-in bias, that permeates, it goes clear through the whole system of how you're going to establish the protocols to recover. Hatcheries are bad. So what that's telling you is you're going to do away with any type of hatchery program that you have. That's right. What we did on the Oregon coast. Remember, we were getting 7 to 9 million Coho smolts a year putting in on the Oregon coast that were hatchery produced. We had hatchery harvest opportunities, not only out of the Columbia River plume fish that are now supporting our hatchery offshore opportunities, but you also had inland opportunities because you had some hatcheries in basins. Those have now been, those been discontinued. I think we're we're under 500,000 fish that are coming in off of Oregon coastal Coho hatcheries now. So you look at the whole thing and you say, when you go in with a bias immediately, you're not going to come out with anything but a biased conclusion or product. If you're a car manufacturer and the only color you're going to paint your cars is red, you're going to have all red cars.
Yes. Because
that's your policy. Yep. And so we just have to have, so we complained about not being included in that process. And we were assured that we would be. Well, it kind of reminds me of the Allstate. I don't want to just put down the department because they paid my paychecks for years. it kind of gets to that all-state commercial, you're in good hands. And I said, until there's an oops. So we just have to be there again. That's why all these groups are so important. And getting collectively put together is to be aware. Because truthfully, an Upper Columbia Basin group or a Washington group has no idea that there is a Coho, $23 million Coho recovery plan going on that's going to have a major impact on Oregon's southern coast and even mid-coast. Because as we've seen, and there's a great saying by Moravia Raft Company, everything flows downstream. Yeah, and that's right. I mean, Absolutely. What starts in Washington often hits us.
Yeah.
And then we have the California, the Californicating of Oregon and Washington. And I hope that didn't offend anybody, but those really affect the way we do a lot of our business. So all of this, Leonard's right. This gets deep into the weeds, and I'm not sure how many people really, and I know we've said some things already that people are going to object to, and that's why it needs to be said.
100%.
Having the conversation is where we move the dial.
Yeah, exactly.
The biggest thing about that Coos Basin Coho recovery plan is none of us had a clue about that going on. None of the people in Coos Bay, the Salmon Trout Enhancement Program people or the STEP Commission, lifelong members and guardians and of the Coos River System hatchery people, they had no idea that this was going on until it came out. They were not invited to be a part of this plan. That
sends up about 20 red flags in my mind.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, there's.
Yeah. And so, like, why are these groups, the user groups, primarily, I guess, that are utilizing the resource, they seem to not be involved in the management decisions. They seem to not have as large of a say as other groups. I just don't know the inner workings of the Department of Fish and Wildlife. I haven't worked for them or anything. But it seems like there's no transparency. There's no communication with all the user groups. I mean, how do we go about solving that? If these groups aren't even being consulted on it, like, how do we start changing that?
What's interesting, Leonard sent out a letter yesterday to the department. Composed it yesterday. I believe it went out today. But, we had a legislative action that set up the Salmon Trout Enhancement Program in 1981. And that was a volunteer program to assist our fishery recovery as well as hatch boxes, stream restoration, river cleanups. I mean, the what's in their sphere of influence or activities, volunteer activities, is really large. But try to find what step groups actually even exist now. So if one reason maybe they don't get those involved is they don't know how many step groups they even have, or they're purposely ignoring those. I don't know what you did. Hopefully it's not the latter. Right. And so that was a great letter that he wrote. And just to say, we would really like to have a list of all the step groups so we can advise them of these type of plans when they're coming out and urge them to become participants in early planning, in early stages of plans. If we wait, as we've noticed with the Washington Commission and the Oregon Commission, if we wait to our 3 minutes of fame or 3 minutes of testimony in front of the commission, the deal's almost always done.
Right.
Not going to say the fix is in, but, I watched a guy a decade ago, a rancher from Southeast Oregon. He drove 10 hours overnight to get to a big game hearing. And he gets up there. This guy's driven midnight to get there. He talks about on his ranch. I used to, fourth generation, we used to have mule deer in the fields every night. Now they're not there. There's something going on with mule deer in his area, his homestead country. So he gives his spiel. The chair thanks him. And he gets up and he walks back, sits down in the audience. And there was never a question asked of staff if they've looked at the situation in that general area or not. And the guy talked to me right after the meeting was over and he goes, what the hell did I waste my time for?
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people feel like that.
You're absolutely right, Steve. And there's that angst, that frustration. And so, I really want you to say what you said to open this thing with, Todd.
You go ahead. You can have it. All yours.
It's listeners, this is probably one of the most important things I've heard in, well, since they made a great egg cure. Individually, it's basically individually, it's easy for them not to hear us. Collectively, we're hard to ignore. That's the sense of it and the gist of it. And so this Friday in Burns, Oregon, will be a commission meeting. And I'm still fired up about what he did with the inland Coho seasons on the coast. And I'm sure you are too, Todd. Boy, we're getting a hell of an opportunity, aren't we?
Oh, man.
Oh, boy, we're just going to whack it and stack it. There won't be, the river's still going to be going down in CFS. Right. And so anyway, I just look at this and I say, okay, they can tell us that they gave us a season. So originally I was going to drive over there and public comment it and say, what, come on, we've been, Commissioner Spellbrink and I have been talking about this for 2 years. We know what the Amendment 13 says, and inland fisheries would be treated equally, and you're giving us one fish for the year in a time period that we won't even have any fish in the river.
I mean, but it looks really good on paper, doesn't it?
Yeah. You could have a great mastodon season in the Willamette Valley because they dug up a tusk at OSU a few years ago when they were rebuilding Parker Stadium or Reeser. And so you could have a spear only. You could have it for 6 months. They were once here, but if the species isn't there, why have the season? That's how foolish I think a lot of these things are.
Well, I mean, and look at what they just did on the Columbia. I was talking to Cody, who works up there. For forever they've been telling him those tules are gone. But and don't quote me on the dates or whatever. This is second, knowledge of trying to regurgitate what Cody told me. But the gist of what he said was they've been telling them for years those tules are beyond them and already up the river and out of their way by like the middle of August. But this year they got shut down because they were catching too many tules at the end of August. And he's like, like you were saying before we started, the moving the goalpost, it was here. And then, and that's what you've been abided by for years. And now they're saying you're catching too many fish. But the whole time you made it sound like the science and the data was those fish are already gone. It's, I think that's where a lot of opening a season when those fish aren't going to be there. It looks good on paper, like they're really, and I don't know exactly who I'm pointing my finger at when I say they. I don't want it to make it sound, whoever's making these policies is purposely sabotaging, because the next year they're going to say, well, we're not opening it up again because you didn't catch enough fish, and so that shows us there are no fish. It just seems like they're constantly using that stuff against us when, we didn't catch any fish. There was 2 in the river, and so, that's where it's frustrating.
I was just trying to pull up an email that I got late this afternoon. Washington Fish and Wildlife had a meeting today on the Buoy 10 area, Coho fishery, and those fish are coming back like everybody expected them to. We knew from last year's jack return and everything else, and improving ocean cycle that we were going to have, an increase over what was predicted. Predictions are always, we understand anything you're dealing with a highly migratory species that you're going to have problems with actually coming in saying, okay, we're going to have 500,000. You might have 200,000. I mean, it's too many variables to be right down to, it's not your bank account. Let's put it that way. So there's a lot of things that go into the model. But when we notice that we are actually exceeding our projection, not by a little, but substantially, you need to make in-season adjustments
Mhm.
because those are fish that people have actually, I'll just be blunt, have paid for.
Absolutely.
And so allow them to have access. And we know that under the ESA, there's acceptable take levels, the risk benefit level, and of these fisheries. So we know we might actually have some form of harm on an ESA listed species while we're trying to capture another species. There's no question. We know that.
Right.
But you also have to have that risk analysis go into higher returns. In other words, when those returns go up, put it this way, if you have 2 black beans in a quart jar of white beans, that's half full. So you have a higher percentage if that full jar is full of white beans. In other words, the more white beans that are there, the less chance those 2 black beans are going to get put in the pot. It is risk analysis. And so we can do better. I guess that's it. And we should demand better. And I think groups finally are. So the outcome of today's meeting was we'll have to look at the modeling.
Do you have any idea when those models were put together? Like, are they consistently updating them? Or,
Did
you know,
you guys freeze up, Steve?
I can still hear you. Your video is a little frozen. Do we lose everybody? I'm not sure if we lost the
System
live.
froze up.
Oh,
There he
you guys
is.
are coming back for me. Are you guys back?
Yep, I am.
So I was asking a question about the models. You know, we know that they're very inaccurate. It seems like they're either over predicting or under predicting. Do you guys have any idea about the actual models, when they've last been updated? What kind of information goes into them? I mean, do you guys have any information at all on them?
Leonard, I would definitely say this is where I would defer to our science guys.
Absolutely. I
yeah.
have one comment to make, and I hate to, I heard Todd say we shouldn't talk about they or those guys, but I hate to name names, but I did have a staff person tell me, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago, they reduced a lot of the harvest this year for the fall Chinook on a lot of our streams. And the answer I got was that they have been over forecasting for return numbers. So in other words, they're forecasting, instead of forecasting this many fish, it's going to this many fish. But yeah, I wish I had one of our science guys here to speak about modeling and trends and what they've done over the years. But a lot of that, it's only as good as the data that's put into it. And it's only as good as the computer program they're using to model it with. That's about all I could say.
Well, and that's, but these are all, we would love to have a couple of scientists on there on here, in a future podcast to answer these questions. One of the questions that I have, because I'm not real clear on it, Leonard, is what is the difference between the ODF and W and the commission? Is it the same thing, or is it 2 different entities, I guess? What is the major, because you have these, we have our commissioners, and I don't understand, are they ODF and W? Or are they?
That's a great question, Todd. Looking back in history, the commission is a citizens advisory panel. They aren't made up of scientists. They don't even need to understand these days. They don't even need to understand hunting and fishing. Some of them have never held a hunting and fishing license, so they don't understand the harvest aspect of it, or any of the modeling or forecasting or any of those things that go with it. Looking back, it was more common sense people, mainstream people, maybe a little more of a working class people, because basically those are the ones that had a good grasp on it. And we still have, maybe a few of those commissioners left on there, but it's kind of morphed into modern day. They want somebody with other kinds of qualifications to represent the non-user constituents in Oregon. But it used to be, to answer your question more clearly, it used to be the commission was just there to support staff and make sure that there weren't any glaring oversights by staff making any big missteps. Now it's all in that the commission used to answer to staff. Now it's changing. The staff is answering to the commission oftentimes. And
Well,
the commission is actually going against staff recommendation at times and making their own versions.
Right. And, because my idea of a commission is, as you can see on my walls, I hunt and fish. As you can see by that buck behind me, very successfully, in this bear over here. I will tear my rotator cuff, pat myself on the back. You guys will learn. But, I want a commission. I want an anti-hunter on there. I want a gill netter on there. I want a sport fisherman on there. I want just somebody that doesn't do it. That's because we all need that oversight to make sure we're not straying. What's the sense of having a commission that all believes the same thing? That's unrealistic to think anything productive is going to come out of there, because they're only going to think one way, tunnel vision. And we all do it. It's human nature. We all get perspective. An analogy that I just learned this, through one of my personal dealings with an organization that I support in my community level, not fishing or, it's completely separate than that. We made a sizable donation to them because we believe in their plan, and we raised some money in a way that they didn't deem acceptable. So they would no longer like our support. And for 3 or 4 years, I have held this. I'm not going to donate to it. If you don't want my money because guns are involved or whatever, then that's on you. So I'm not going to support it anymore. And then somebody on the boat the other day said, well, how do you know it was the organization thought and not a bad person in the organization? And it was like throwing that light switch. I wanted to believe what I wanted to believe and I wasn't willing to look outside that perspective no more until somebody explained it to me. It could just very well be somebody bad in the organization that didn't believe in how we did it, not the organization itself. And so that's what I'm in fear of with the commission. If everybody thinks the same way, they're all going to be so narrow-minded, and they're not going to they're not going to have the oversight to where, we're not doing things the right way because that's how we should do them. We're just doing what everybody else wants us to do. That's what I'm afraid of.
What's the qualifications, or how do you become on the commission?
Okay, so what we have is Oregon revised statutes. Everything that's done in Oregon has to be done under. This is the primary statute, the Oregon Wildlife Policy, and that's for any reader that wants to look it up on their computer screen. It should type in ORS 496.012, and that's the 7 steps, the 7 co-equals that everything in Oregon has to be managed under. And then we have hundreds of other statutes dealing with what's a big game mammal, all commercial fish, what's all this different stuff. So there's just literally chapters and chapters, 496, 497, 498. And those are all the statutories. And from that, then, there's the administrative rule obligation. You're going to have to write administrative rules to follow the statutory intent. And that's how it gets down into field application. And the policy-making board on the administrative rule is the Oregon Fish and Wildlife Commission. The staff can work on a project, design a program, but the actual policy has to be approved by the commission. The current commission is 7 people appointed by the governor, and they serve at the will of the governor. There are some extremely easy qualifications to become a commissioner. It doesn't say that it just says you have to have general knowledge of hunting and fishing or natural resource, ag, timber, yada, yada. So of the 7 members, they're broken up into, Oregon had 5 congressional districts. There had to be represented from each of the congressional districts, and then 1 at large from Eastern Oregon and 1 at large from Western Oregon. And what we've noticed is, as we've had, and I'm not going to get political, it's just as this is a fact, as we've had certain governors who have had a different ideology, and the best way to say it, who are no longer involved in the traditional outdoor community sports, they have veered away from what we call traditional or heritage activities in their appointments. And so what we've noticed now is that we have people that have a lot of PhDs or have worked in the department or worked in a Portland environmental position with the city of Portland, now setting policies that the department has to follow. And so that's concerning to us. Right now, we are rewriting. There will be a bill submitted in the upcoming legislative session, because we know that the commission by statute has to have representation from each congressional district. And I hope everybody's following me, because this really gets right to the heart of where Todd was going. We now have 6 congressional districts, so we have to rewrite. That gives us an opportunity now to try to strengthen the qualifications. So I had a meeting late last week where we have a great work group put together. People actually from Washington sit on this, and other places where we're trying to draw great knowledge. We have attorneys from the former Kansas Department of Fish and Game, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. Everybody else is looking at this. How do we strengthen to protect the North American model and our traditions? And so that it's an ongoing process. I can't tell you a lot more about it now because we're still looking at what qualifications can we get there. We have some great state representatives and state senators that are working on it with it and will carry the bill. So all I can say is right now, there's a real perception, and I think it's we can look at voting record and say that we have an unfriendly commission to science-based fish and wildlife management commissions in both Washington and Oregon. I think their voting record keys that.
Right.
And so I could go on for hours on that commission thing, because I really do think when we have governor appointees, you can lose control of your heritage.
Absolutely. And one of the things that, and I seen this happen in Idaho out in the Uwais when they shut down that wilderness. You look at 5-6 years ago, how they pitted the gill netters against the sport fishermen. And what everybody didn't realize is they used all that information that we said about each other and put it to all of us as a collective. And that's the new wise. The horseback riders didn't like the dirt bike riders, didn't like the 4-wheel drive guys. So that environmental group come in and used all the bad things that they were saying. I look at it like water skiers where I'm fishing. Everybody says, "Don't that make you mad?" I said, "Absolutely not." I really encourage everybody to use the resource as they see fit, because the second we all stop using the resource, they're going to shut it down to all of us. And so just because water skiing is not my passion doesn't mean I want it to be closed off to them. That's why I don't like fly fishing. I mean, I don't like fly fishing only seasons, you know, but where the salmon are spawning up on the upper road, it makes sense, you know, so people aren't flagrantly, you know, if you put eggs in that river, you're just going to be hammering those salmon, you know, in the upper section. And so I do agree with it, but, you know, it's area specific and time specific, I guess, you know, but we can't pit ourselves. You know, a lot of the fly fishermen groups are getting a lot of flack. And I really encourage everybody to do their due diligence into the background of that fly fishing organization before they sign with them, because not all of them want to shut it down to us, and not all of them, you know, it's just, you know, we got to be to, you know, again, right back to what you said, anglers for anglers. You know, there's some meeting ground there, you know, but definitely let's all come to the table with what we propose. You know, I mean, the ODF and W, I know me and a number of guides have offered them, come get in my boat. I'll row the boat. You can count fish. I will donate a day. You're in, you know, we're all U.S. Coast Guard licensed captains. You're in good hands. It's going to be a safe trip. I mean, we will all donate to this stuff to give you all the data that you want. You don't got to take. So they load one boat up with 3 ODF biologists or volunteers or whoever, counting one section of river. Well, we could do so much more river if you get one in my boat, one in Nate's boat, one in Alex's boat, Steve's boat, you know, I mean, everybody's boats. We literally could get more better data if they would allow us to donate to that. And it's every time we try, we hit, it's right up to enforcement. You know, I called them, hey, I'll run you down the river. I have a pretty recognizable boat. So everybody that sees my boat's not going to know if I have fishing game in there or clients in there. And so it's going to impede a lot of this, you know, because the snagging in the upper river is atrocious. I mean, you know, that those locals up there will tell you that salmon doesn't bite. You have to snag it. It's insane. There's nothing like it. The only thing I can compare it to is the Cowlitz River 27 years ago up in Washington with a 10 and 12 foot leader. Yeah, that they would coil up on the ground behind him because it was so long that you couldn't cast it. It's insane, right? But you know, I mean, I wish we could get to a place to where they would utilize the guides in that regard of, if you want to enforce the river, there's a guide that will run you down it. I will take a day off to do it. I mean, I don't have a problem giving back to get the data, because I want the best decision made for our resource.
With the conversation that we've had tonight, it seems like that data doesn't matter, though. I mean, we've talked about the hatchery program. I mean, we've talked about the commission ignoring the staff. It doesn't seem that data actually makes any difference whether we have it or not. So, I mean, what's the point of collecting it? I understand the importance of collecting it, but what do we do?
Because
this is a great segue to talk about the Salmon Trout Enhancement Program and volunteers. And I don't think you have one of those technically anymore over in the Medford area, or Upper Rogue District, I should say. We have a very strong one here on the South Coast, and we do take ODFW staff down the river and work with them to gather data in our hatchery programs and research and monitoring. I think it's important to work with ODFW staff at the ground level like that. And that way the community is part of that data and has a better understanding of what's going on in the STEP program. As somebody said, you know, volunteerism has been the greatest thing for our fisheries ever in Oregon. And you know, to bring that up, we just suddenly found out about, well, we've been asking for a couple of years. We hear there's some rewriting being done for the Salmon Trout Enhancement Program language, the intent. We'd like to be a part of that. All of a sudden it popped up the other day. It's done. in my mind, I'd just like to say kind of behind closed doors by a very small group. So that's one of the topics we covered with ODFW executive staff on Saturday, asking them, we want to be a part of that. And we want to be able to preserve the original 1982 intent of that language. And we'd also like a list of all STEP organizations in the state. We've been asking for that for some time. They're kind of hard to track down. But everybody should be aware of this STEP language rewrite and edits, because that's our hatchery programs hinge on this.
Is there actual wording that you can reference for us? Like, are they becoming less hatchery friendly? What's that wording saying? Do you know?
The potential for less hatchery friendly definitely exists in the rewrite. And that's what we really raised our ire right off the bat. And our concern was, okay, look, we're seeing a lot of strikes. In other words, if in today's political parlance, a whole ton of redactions. And so, it's always what isn't there, the devil's in the details syndrome. And so what we're trying to do there is make sure that there is sunlight on this process. And the Coquille tribe has been fantastic on that, because they're real concerned about, a STEP program going away. Gosh, they're trying to build a conservation hatchery and all of the volunteer work that's going to go on that in the community, the greater community, not just the tribal community. And so I think staff heard us. I think we were assured that there will be a somewhat of a summary, Stephen, that's put out to get to where, try to explain to where they're at now. But we were also assured that this isn't the final draft. And so that there's going to be more eyes on the prize.
Yeah,
and
but
so,
the skepticism there is, it's not the first time we've been lied to. I mean, it's this isn't the final draft. Oh,
Boy.
That's what I mean, in all honesty, that's what I'm afraid of is, once it is in a draft and, it's going to be 10 times harder to return to reverse that draft than, it's the bait and switch, look over here, but don't watch this one.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, that's what I'm afraid. At this point, everything, I'm so skeptical on anything that it's hard to keep an open mind, because I think that it's all out to get us at this point. I really do.
You're a man after my heart. There's a great thing that came out years ago. It's called Trust But Verify. And that's the position we have to be in on all of this. There are public trust managers. We have given them that. Mm-hmm. They're really working for us. That's it's called public trust. And so, but when that trust appears to be somehow maybe misled or misinformed, then that's when we have to verify. And I think that's what's going on this STEP rewrite. Here's the thing about STEP volunteer. I just wrote myself, for years I've said this to an angler: are you a giver or are you a taker?
Right.
I want to be a giver and a taker.
Yes. And
if I'm just a taker, you're actually part of our problem. Yep. And so what STEP has done is allowed people an access to being a giver and not just a taker, not just reliant on others. In other words, it's not a handout. It's basically working hand in hand.
Right.
And so STEP, look at Whiskey Creek on the North Coast. You look at Morgan Creek on the South Coast. Two programs that if they went away, the Wilson Rivers winter steelhead, fantastic winter steelhead fishery, would also go away. You look at Morgan Creek Hatchery, the STEP hatchery on the South Coast, Coos Bay. That goes away. Your fall Chinook fishery has a very good one, will go away. Those are STEP programs. We've watched those programs go away in the mid-coast and elsewhere, and we're just not willing to have them go away anymore without a fight. So I think, Todd, you're really hitting on all the cylinders on bringing the topics up that most people are aware of, concerned about. And when we get to to how do we build this collective of anglers and hunters and trappers and all these folks that commercial fishermen. And about 7 or 8 years ago, we were involved in another anti-trapping issue, and having been a lifelong trapper, the market's not there. You're not seeing guys go out here and kill tens of thousands of anything anymore. That's just isn't what's going on. It's no different than harvesting a steelhead or whatever. It's a heritage, it's a culture, it's a value. So we were fighting something in the legislature a number of years ago and weren't having a tremendous amount of success. And I came home one day and I thought, gosh, we just got to be able to get more people behind us. There's not a lot of trappers and you're kind of standing out here on your own. And I came across something called the Wisconsin Wildlife Congress. And I Googled it up and looked at it and I thought, my gosh, it's a collective of every sport group in Wisconsin. They all get together and have meetings. They all get together and they don't have to agree on everything, but they agree on this. Their outdoor traditions are important and worth saving, but collectively is the only way they're going to do it. So we started trying to get this together in Oregon. And it just fell flat because all organizations were worried about their turf. You know where I'm going with that?
Yeah.
Oh my God, somebody might steal a member. And I said, it's not about that. It's about becoming a collective. So it didn't go anywhere. Well, then all of a sudden, Portland environmentalists come up with Proposition 13, Initiative Petition 13, which would ban pretty much everything in Oregon. That caused this thing to have a new set of eyes. And now we formed the Oregon Sportsman's Conservation Partnership. It's every national group and every state group in Oregon. Washington is saying, whoa, Oregon was able to put this together, and Washington is looking at it now. It is the way, right back to where you opened up our conversation this evening. It is the only way we are going to have a reasonable chance of having people elected to office and appointed to commissions that respect our conservation dollars and our heritage.
Absolutely. It's, it's funny you bring up trapping. I lived in Idaho for 20 some years, where we still trap. And it's like you said, 400 traps, you're not trapping 400 animals. You're working a lot of work for a bobcat here and there, a badger, a lot of rats. Coyotes are smart, so not too many of those. It never really pinned them down. And the hound hunters, I had this talk here earlier this year. I'm a big fan of hound hunting. I love watching the dogs work, and they said, yeah, but isn't that unethical? And I said, what is ethical? What is not ethical about it? I said, if you look at this bear on my wall, this is a sow. She was just over 350 pounds. She had been treed 6 times in 8 years. And the year before, she's got a white blaze on her chest. We were hunting this bear. We trained a number of bears before we found this is the bear we were looking for. With that white blaze was pretty recognizable. She was dry the year before. We didn't harvest her, even though that's the bear I wanted on my wall. We didn't harvest her because she might not have been in season with a boar, and there's a lot of things that can happen. So the next year we hunted back in that area and we found her again, and she was dry again. Running with hounds, if you see this bear on the ground, you're killing it every time. She's that big, but she'd already pushed her cubs up a tree before you got to look at her. And so by hunting with hounds, it gives you the 20 minutes to really look at that animal to make sure you're taking the animal that you want. And people, they just think, oh, hound hunting, it's the dogs are doing the work. It's unfair. Idaho or Oregon, you can bait deer and elk because baiting bear is unethical. Go to Idaho and you can bait bear, but not deer and elk because it's unethical. And you're like, and so with bait, it gives you time to make sure that's the animal that you want to harvest. And so, but again, it's propaganda. It's to a person that doesn't fish or live in the Pacific Northwest, you hear about hatcheries, and I mean, if you don't come from the industries that we come from, it's as sad as it is to say, it's easy to believe because it sounds that bad. But when you look at the whole perspective of it from our point of view, it makes sense. We've hurt the resource. I mean, we've damaged the ecosystem enough to where they need help. And hatcheries are, I mean, I'm not saying I have the answers or hatcheries are the only answer. I'm not saying that by any means. But I mean, we have to do something to enhance the damage that we've done as humans, So
you're absolutely right. You're mentioning some key things here. What every angler and every hunter and every of our traditional sporting community needs to understand. We have a message. But those who do not participate, there's only about 6% of Americans who actually participate in hunting. About a little 16 to 20% to participate in angling. But yet 84% of Oregonians, right around that, do support hunters and do support science-based take. So when you start looking at that, we come from positions of, that we're relatively strong on. But we're noticing a shift there because who's now controlling the narrative? Who's controlling the messaging? And so podcasts like this, Stephen, are really, these are important. And I don't know how many people are listening. Probably a lot of people have maybe tuned out and tired of listening to me already. But if we don't have equal footing in messaging, well, those percentages are continuing to go down. And so it's really them against us. They put out propaganda. And that's exactly what you were just talking about, Todd, and the bear issue.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you this. Is there a difference of a scent trailing dog on a bear or a scent trailing dog on a chucker or a hun or a pheasant?
Nope.
But why are those held in such high esteem? Could that be a class situation? Remember what they always said? Yeah, what they always said about us hound hunters is, oh my gosh, you're, and I won't go there, but you know where I am, where we could go. And so what we have to look at here is it's a science-based activity. I attended.
All right, you got me going on the hound hunting. I've got to say it,
Good.
That is a great resource management tool.
Absolutely.
And, due to Stan's comment about the governor appointed agendas and our commissioners and things like that, and people in the background, the shadow organizations working to eliminate a lot of these types of things. That's a great management tool that has been eliminated. And here's a great example. The ODFW in the state enlisted a Dr. Jackson to take a team of university students, and they spent years studying the black-tailed deer, analyzing everything about them. And the bottom line, they came back to the commission and told them with the predation what it is between the bear and the cougar, and they had all the numbers, and they did a great job. They said your black-tailed deer numbers are unsustainable unless you do something about predation.
Mm-hmm.
He might as well have been talking to the wall. There was
in
no
92.
Response. Next topic.
Yeah, in 92, my dad retired from as a captain of the state police down here in Southern Oregon. And in 92, when I graduated, there was Fish and Game officers on the news saying this cannot pass. You have no idea what you're getting ready to do to the resource. We have to have, and what people don't understand is the second you have a problem cat, they run it with hounds and kill it. I mean, so why
and
why not have it be a money generator instead of cost them money? I mean, it's ridiculous. Yeah, it's.
So Todd, on that, late this afternoon, I'm working on a couple political campaigns, and we won't be political tonight on this, but we do have some candidates out here who are going to support us if they can get there. Mm-hmm. And I was talking to the vice president of the Oregon United Sporting Dogs Association. And he's working on a DNA recovery study on black bear, southeastern and southwestern Oregon right now. Last month, in 5 days, they treat 15 different bear.
Yeah.
Oregon does not. We are the second largest have the second largest black bear population in the lower 48. Let's start. It. Yeah. And so the only one that could come possibly close to us is Maine. So you're absolutely right. Because a bear comes into a bait bucket or goes up a tree and is classified as trophy hunting, no, truthfully what it is selective hunting.
Absolutely.
Extremely selective. Yep. If you can see she's nursing a lion up a tree, yep. She's a female, and you can see you can see that. You can see
absolutely.
She's actively nursing. Absolutely. Or she's got those yearling kittens up that. You're absolutely right. Those yep. kittens are going up a tree, oftentimes yep. in the same tree that she's in.
Yep.
Majority of hound guys are not going to kill. It's no different than a lot of it's dog training. And then yes, like your big sow there.
Yeah.
She was a target. But let's analyze what she's done to her genetically after 8-9-year-old sow.
13 years by her tooth.
Okay.
That's how old she was when by the tooth that they pulled out of her.
Her genetics have been well passed on.
Absolutely.
And so, you look at this whole thing. So it gets back to ideology, anti-hunters, anti-harvesters, anti-hatchery folks. And I agree with what you said earlier on the commission. I want those people represented on the commission because they have a stake. They are as important to the conversation as we are. But when we're providing the bulk of the funding, we have to have the majority on the vote.
Yes.
Otherwise, you're disrespecting the American system of conservation funding.
Right.
And that is what every state wildlife agency in the nation depends on as their primary source of keeping the lights on. So there's a lot that it could go into hours of conversation on that. But I do want to just tell people, I'm not going to mention names, but you have choices on November 8th in the governor's election.
Right.
You have one great choice. And if people will do a little bit of research, they'll notice on the bottom of one of the platforms of one of those candidates, it says this: to modernize and enhance our hatcheries. Only one candidate has given credit to our community. Won't take hard to search it if somebody's interested.
No, and that's exactly it. You just got to get off your boat. Me and Steven have said, in a couple podcasts earlier is, we vote with our dollars. I'm done supporting companies that, and I have guide buddies that are like, dude, my money doesn't even register on the scale, but it goes back again to what I said. Individually, yeah, you're right. But collectively, they'll change their policy because a lot of these people are donating to because somebody had a great song and dance. I came into your office and I had a great song and dance, and I spewed just enough rhetoric by your body language and everything to get you to side with me, push back a little. Yeah, it's selling. I mean, they're buying you, man. And they're like, yeah, well, that sounds great. We're going to donate to that and have no idea what their money is doing to our environment. It literally is. There's a brewery. I will not even let that beer on my boat.
And I know exactly what you're talking about. I won't mention it either.
No.
I'll guarantee that beer is not on my boat or in my plunkin shack. And we drink a little beer in the plunkin shack.
And I'm going to name it the Deschutes Brewery. It will not be on my boat. Because I don't have a problem with them knowing that I'm not. No. But yeah, absolutely. And I tell everybody when they book, you are not bringing that beer on my boat, because they are supporting what I am dead set against. And so I'm not going to support them or let them be. If you don't want to fish with me because you want to drink that beer, so be it.
Yeah, I'll
put my wallet on the table.
I'll let him bring a banana before I let him bring that beer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so
back during the whole North Umpqua hatchery thing, I posted the whole list that was all the businesses that supported the wild fish conservation. That data is public for anybody out there that wants to know. You just have to go to the organization. You can see their list of supporters, and those are the businesses that you don't want to support. And you should also reach out to them and let them know what they are supporting and what the data actually says, and just inform them. You don't have to attack them, but let them know that this is what you are supporting by donating to this organization.
And Steve, you're absolutely right there. Yeah, you really are. Yeah, go ahead, Todd.
It's definitely given the benefit of the doubt of, hey, this is who we are. Do you understand this is what you're supporting? Because, that's fair. It's, I want to get mad and I want to attack them because it's human nature. And I'm very emotional about this. This is my livelihood, and it's something that I grew up doing. That's why I work so hard to give people the experience and the knowledge of seeing the river from that perspective, or the lake or whatever. I really enjoy that. And so I am very passionate about it, just because I want it to be around the good old days. I've said this before, the good old days they're never coming back. I'm never going to see steelhead and salmon like I seen in the Siletz River when I was a boy. But that doesn't mean we can't make these the good old times for this generation right here, right now. My nephew Dwayne, he's 9 years old. These should be the greatest days of his life, and they should continue. Because they've gotten so bad with policies. You can put whatever word you want to why we are where we are. I think we've learned a lot. History is a funny thing. You can't just, like you said, are you a taker or a giver? I've finally matured enough in my personal life. Still a fairly young man, but I see things with a different eye. I've said this before on here as well. I grew up snagging sorebacks in the river, salmon. I'm not proud of that fact, but that's, that was a natural progression of the time or the era, right? It was, it doesn't make it right, but I didn't know any different then. I was just a kid standing over the river in the bedrock chutes at Rock Creek, hay hooking salmon that come through between my legs. There was that many, but I didn't have the information that I have now. And now that I have the information, I generally think, man, it's, how do I give kids this information now to where they don't have to wait 50 years to see the river with the eyes that I look at it with. And so, that's why I'm so passionate about it, is that I want this to be around forever. Everybody should be able to catch one of these fish, in their life numerous times.
And working together, that Absolutely. Is extremely accomplishable. There's actually, I've often said, in today's hyper world that we live in, hyperbolic world, we have to look at this and say, and there's a great book that was written by Richard Louviere called Last Child in the Woods. We know that when our youngsters are engaged in the outdoor activities, hunting, fishing, even just snow skiing, whatever it may be, just get out there and get outdoors and listen to a pileated woodpecker or whatever it may be, that those kids have less of a chance of ending up in bad situations. And boy, our kids have a lot of opportunities for that now. And so what you're really saying is we can help everybody out by making sure that we have these opportunities for us and for future generations. And,
Absolutely. It's a
noble cause. And people ask me, my God, Stan, you started work in 1973 on these issues. You retired in 98 and you're still battling away. And I said, it's not about me.
No, it's not about.
If it was about me, I'd have just been hunting and fishing.
Yeah, I can go do this all the time.
I'd like to jump back to that Oregon Sportsman's Conservation Partnership, the newest group that was spawned this year. And I've got to give Stan credit for that first and foremost. Ever since I first met Stan, he was championing for this group. And it finally got some traction with that IP13 and took off. But I'm going to let Stan elaborate a little bit more on the details. And I just say, Todd, you may want to find yourself involved with this.
I'm going to check into it for sure.
Absolutely. It's pretty easy and very rewarding, much less work than most others. Our bylaws dictate on these committees that you can only have a maximum of 2 people from each organization on a committee. That way the committee doesn't become lopsided.
Right.
People bring issues to the table, to the committee, say the fisheries committee, and organizations that would like to sign on and support that issue that's on the table or not, they can with their own organization name, not the OSCP, but each individual organization. And this is catching on fire going across the United States. Stan can tell you better than I, but there's a lot of other states that have done this, but are in the process of putting the same thing together. So that's where it's at, is really bringing this to the national level. So Stan, I just defer it to you a little bit to expand on that.
Well, Todd brought it up early. He said, how do we get everybody looking down through the same lens? And that is it. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to see the same thing at the end of that lens.
Right.
But when
Absolutely.
you're looking at wildlife management and our traditional outdoor heritage sports, everybody looks through that lens. So that is constant there. Now, we might disagree on certain different issues in there, and that's great. That's absolutely fine. And so, but it was just bringing that collective. I hate to use a term from somebody who ran for president a few years ago. Thankfully, didn't win. But when she said it takes a village, she was absolutely right.
Absolutely.
It does take a village.
It does.
So that's kind of where this whole thing was going. And what's also unique about this, it's part of the Congressional Sportsman's Foundation. In other words, we are directly in Washington, D.C. Now, how many small groups, what outreach do you think the Sleds Anglers or the LC Sportsmen or the Rogue South Coast Anglers had the direct to Washington, D.C.? So the co-chair of the legislative committee with me is Keely Hopkins of the Congressional Sportsman's Foundation. That's just the breadth of this thing. We have a fantastic president, and what a mover and an organizer and get after her in Amy Patrick. She's the policy director for the Oregon Hunters Association. She's the president. Leonard's the chairman of the Fisheries Committee. I'm the VP of the organization, and you look at it is the who is a representative of Oregon sporting community. And so, and we've extended invitations to some groups that you would thought would be there and haven't been, and hopefully we'll coax them in. But it really is giving us that collective voice, or the village.
I find in today's world, shame and ridicule. That works. That works very well. And so, but it is important to, and it's okay that you don't want to name names, but what we started is, we're going to piss some people off. But accountability, I'm not right. Not everything that I say is right or wrong. It's not about that. It's about starting the conversation, because before I support you, I want to know why you're not supporting that. What is it? And it's okay. If you're not going to support it, then that be okay. You know, the number one thing that everybody says, because the nonprofit that I founded down here, which, you know, we dissolved it just because of the kids that we serve, you know, the kids that we served have underlying conditions. And so through the new, you know, we'll bring it back, but just now is not the right time. They're like, who do we donate to? That's simple. It's asking for a profit and loss statement. Because if you're not willing to give me a profit and loss statement to where I can see for myself where you're spending your money, then you're hiding something, and I don't trust that. And so we got to get to where it's okay. You know, it's okay that they don't support it, but I want to know why. I want to know why. What decision did you bait? What thought went through your mind when you made the decision to not support something that I agree with? We should all support, you know, because that gives us a seat higher up. And accountability. I want to know why, because that astounds me.
It's that accountability and transparency. I mean, that's why we kind of established the Northwest Fishing Club how we have, using cryptocurrency, is so that there's a public ledger. Somebody can go to our profit and loss statement 24/7, 365 days a year and see exactly what's happening. You can see exactly the proposals, the discussions that happen with where the money's going. So we can't hide anything. It's all there. It's a public ledger. Anybody can see what they want. You know, and that's a big thing for us, is that transparency, that accountability. And it's something, I mean, this whole discussion that we've had tonight, every organization, doesn't matter what it is, ODFW, the nonprofits, where is that transparency and where is that accountability? You know, you don't see it at all from the discussions that we've had tonight. And so that's why we've started this. That's what we're trying to build. Yeah. And I mean, you don't get anywhere. That's how you build that trust with people, is both those things.
You know, Steve, you're absolutely right there. And one of the key issues that we hear is, gosh, we already have a good organization here. Why doesn't everybody just join that? And I don't disagree. It's a great organization, and I was on the startup of that organization in Oregon, but we can have more voices at the table. So say there's one organization representing anglers, and say that what you're going to have is a board picked or a committee put together, and that was a singular organization that speaks for all Oregon anglers. But the other side has 7 voices because they represent this group, that group, that group, this group. So just numerically, you know, even my old McKinsey High School math, you can say we just got outnumbered. But if we have a coalition of groups that are coming in there, that all are looking through that same lens, then we can sit there pretty equal at the table. And so that's just where we have to be. And now I belong to 13 different hunting and fishing and trapping organizations as paid membership.
See, I think that's very important, Stan, not to cut you off, but I don't care what organization that you want to support, there's going to be something about that organization that you don't like.
Absolutely.
And that's okay, because you have it's a team of people. And so like you said earlier, not everybody's going to see the same thing through that lens. And so it's very important to not say, well, you don't like this and I'm deadly against that, but let's agree on what we agree on. We'll fight about the other stuff later. You know, don't get hung up on the one thing that nope, they're written off. I'm not supporting that, because there are parts of a lot of organizations. You know, when I say I don't support an organization, it's because of a lot of reasons. You know, it's not just one or two. You know, I mean, you can see that you have an aligned position. You know, how we get there, that's what everybody gets hung up on. You know, how do you catch your steelhead? You know, like I said earlier,
yeah,
I have no idea. I'm gonna find a technique that you're proficient in. I'm gonna exploit that technique. I have no idea how we get to that end game yet, because I haven't seen you with a rod in your hand. And so to back that up, like you said, 11, 13 that's completely, you should be supporting that many. I truly believe that way you're educating yourself, because those organizations aren't going to believe the same thing. And so you're educating yourself to give yourself the data to make the best decision that you can. Whether you want to hear it, just because you don't want to hear it doesn't mean you shouldn't hear it.
That's right. And the baseline question everyone should ask themselves, and is this for the greater good?
Mm-hmm.
And if it's for the greater good of our cause, there can be some minor thing that I just really think, gosh, the organization is total off the chart, and I disagree. But 90% or even 70% of it, this group works towards that greater good. What I'm going to do is let that water run off the duck's back on that other thing. And I would even equate it as this. Do you agree with your wife on dinner every night?
I do. I'll be the first. She's watching. And so I'll be the first to admit I do.
Yeah. And so, it's a marriage, and it's a partnership.
Yes.
And so guys, you're on the right track with this podcast. We recently started one with the Oregon Trappers Association. You said it earlier. If we're not into this social media, the evolving, the emerging, it's going in so many different directions now. For our groups to remain relevant and active and meaningful, we actually have to be in these media.
And that's where, we when we come up with the Northwest Fishing Club, the getting into the Discord and the NFTs and getting into that is where we are headed. And we're trying to cement our foundation in. While everybody else is playing catch up, we're already going to be in that space to where it's our narrative. When Willie Boats built the wheelchair accessible drift boat, and I had number 2, 3, 4. I had they built me a number of them as it progressed through the design. And people would often say, "Well, how is it this way?" I'm the only one doing it. It is my way or nothing. I'm the only expert in this. Because you're doing it, and so that's where we're combating this new technology, and it's scary for a lot of people. Because it's different and we don't understand it yet. Look at the internet when it first came out. It's a lot of information I put in here. I was just figuring out how to jig a coping, and then I get bombarded with this information, so I can't even fish anymore. But we want to be cemented in that arena and not playing catch up, because we don't want the other side to. We want to eat it up before the other side can. And so, with the proof of concept of it here, we hope for big things with it, because this is how we reach the new generation. It is what it is.
And I know nobody on a podcast can read what I just wrote down. As people talk, I like to say, okay, hey, these guys just came up with something that's absolutely right. And this goes what you just said. If you're still on out there, do you want to be on offense, or do you want to be constantly playing defense? The only way we're going to be on the offense is if we take the battle to them.
Absolutely.
Let's take the battle to them. Let's take on these anti-hatchery folks. These guys that said our values of putting a fish in the box for a 13-year-old is not important. If you want that 13-year-old to care about fish and habitat and water quality, no better example of why he should care than a robust fish.
Yep.
100%.
And there's just no better way. And the best drug, and all the us guides know what we mean there, is a good tug. And that's actually, a tug on the end of a string. If we can get more kids addicted to that, you're going to see less crime on the streets. You're going to see less homeless problems. You're going to see it is just absolutely it can be very socially relevant. And in rural communities, Coos Bay, Bandon, John Day, whatever it is, when you look at those kids that are involved in those outdoor heritage sports, you see less problems.
Absolutely, because I don't mind. It's and I say it, I don't know if you guys had a chance to watch the River Feet video that Willie Boats produced. When I first started my guiding, when I lost my leg, it's when you cast, there's nothing else that matters. You are completely engulfed in what you're doing right now, and it's an idle mind when you're sitting around a house and you have nothing else to do but drink, smoke, whatever it is you're doing, and then you lose ambition. And so after ambition, there goes your self-worth. After your self-worth, that's when you make bad decisions because you feel generally upset with your being. And so we do an education application course. I teach you how to tie hooks. I teach you how to bait hooks. I teach you how to use my gear. And then we go apply that. When you step off the boat, I want you to step off the boat with a higher sense of self-worth than when you step onto my boat. And, we were going to use all my stuff because it's the latest and greatest stuff. But that power right there, when we fish the kids that we fish, it opens up their mind to a whole new possibility of, what this world has to offer. It's not just where you are right now. It's where you want to be. That's what you're striving towards. So it's
you're
definitely
right there, Todd. It's there and that's all part and parcel of what White Tonight's been very good for me personally. Every now and then, those of us that are in the trenches feel beat up once in a while and have good conversations with other folks that are fighting this good battle. And I mean, years ago I had a group from San Francisco come up. It's a 12-boat party on the McKenzie, and it was a family reunion. And gosh, we all meet at the boat landing in the morning and drop their cars off, and then we're taking them up to the Blue River boat landing and put in. And there's a couple of youngsters, 14, 15, that are dressed very in Gothic attire. Let's put it this way. And you can see them, they're standoffish. And so we're trying to divvy up, letting the parents and grandparents say, this is the, combination one. So I get both these youngsters in my boat, and I wanted them. And boy, the first hour was pretty rough. If you know what I mean. They were, I said, oh, look at that osprey. And, you see that Casper Mount over there, that beaver, and they could have cared less. One of them hooks into just a big 14, 16-inch rainbow, and it's a good tussle. And we're just fishing wet flies, and it's a good tussle. The rest of the day, they were asking everything about water ouzels to caddis flies to whatever it may be. It was like somebody flipped a switch. So that's what we can do. That's why all of us are fighting so hard.
Absolutely.
And it is. Honestly, it is. And it's not about us old guys waving the flag. Our flag's already been waved.
Yeah.
I've seen the good days, but grandchildren, other friends.
Oh, nieces, nephews. I mean, it just
so,
everything.
Well, I for one, like I said, Leonard and I talked through this week. We're both early risers, so there's a lot of time we're on the phone 5:30 in the morning chatting about, okay, what's going on? What do we need to do? What do we need to get done? And so I can talk about this stuff for hours.
Oh, me too. It's Stephen will tell you. You get me rolling. It's well, it's because I love it, and I was very blessed and fortunate. The other reason why I give back is because, I had Jim Biddle in my corner, one of the greatest men that I've ever been blessed enough to meet. Amen. One of my mentors. When I very first started, he told me then, if you think success is in that gill bag, quit now, kid. And we have to catch fish. We're fishing guys, but my day doesn't, I sell an experience that is unprecedented to what I believe, where I fish and just how I do things without that older support of these are the pitfalls that I've seen literally, every guide that rows a willy boat down the river, doesn't matter which one, the things that he's learned, is invaluable. And I can't, and the only way I can pay Jim Biddle back is to pay it forward two, 3 times. There's, I mean, what am I going to, other than be his friend and whatnot, there's no way I can pay him back other than to make it better. When he built my first boat, he owned that boat. I couldn't afford the boat, and he built it anyway. And he said, I'll own the boat, you carry the insurance, and go change people's lives. And I've never forgot that. I've never forgot that of, somebody that believed in you. And that's what these kids want now.
Yeah,
just somebody to believe in them, to say, you know what, you're worth it. You're worth me investing my time into you. Because
Todd, you sound exactly like an advocate for the Salmon Trout Enhancement Program, because that's a big part of it is taking kids, and there are a lot of young fishermen born every year, and that's a major part of STEP. And you've already got a STEP program going. You just don't have ODFW directly supporting you.
I literally, I'm going to be, I'll be reaching out. I really want to set that up. I want them to know that we are allies in this fight.
Sure.
I like to look forward, and it is what it is. I can't change it, but the rhetoric that I hear in the local area is, I don't want them to look at me like I'm an enemy. Where can I help you? I'm literally offered, if people judge me by my past, that 20-year-old version of me that I used to be, nobody does anything. Nobody's willing to help me out at all. I was not a productive member of society. I grew up hard. It is what it is. And so I don't dwell in the past.
Todd, maybe a lot of those people that judge you for the same man you were when you were 20 years old are still the same man that they were when they were 20 years old.
I can take you to the clear cut. They're drinking beer right now. It's only been logged 3 times now, Leonard. With that accelerated growth there out of Siletz and Sweet Home. And so, but you're absolutely right. It's, I love that part of it. It gives me a purpose, and that's what we all want, right? Is a purpose. That's what a lot of the youngsters are. They're too easy to get onto this and align themselves with the purpose that they really don't understand. They've never allowed themselves to see anything other than what they've been told, which is horrible, and so change that narrative. That's what I want to do for these young people is like I said, the soup that you were born in it seems like a lifetime right now. Had my parents not took me in at 17 when they did, then I wouldn't be who I am today. And so it's a short time, and it gets better, and I think, and I keep that same philosophy for our fisheries. It gets better. I have to believe that it gets better, and it's rolling up your sleeves and fighting. It really does feel like a fight to me. We can dance around that word, but I've said it earlier in the show that I'm literally ready to take the gloves off, and I'm done. That's why I don't mind saying somebody's name that doesn't support what I think we should all be supporting. I'm done. Take the gloves off. I've 3rd generation logger. So I only know one way.
We do have to have people realize it is a fight, and honestly, we're in the fight of our lives right now.
Absolutely.
Oregon is at a tipping point. And I've said it. I've given talks to anglers on the coast in the last few months. Attend a lot of events, but we are at a tipping point. And people say, well, you guys are really talking about just trying a single issue. You're you're saying you're a single issue voter. And I said, is quality of life a single issue? That's what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about here, is our quality of life. And I have begrudged no one who never picks up a fish rod, a rifle, shotgun, or a trap. That's fine. I absolutely have no problem with that. But understand those of us who do, and then understand, and I'm using another one of your sayings there, I wrote it down. We're paying back by paying it forward.
Absolutely.
And so, that's it. So, gentlemen, I'm going to jump. I can't say enough about I appreciate tonight. It's good. You're on the right track. I look at you as a strong ally. And
absolutely.
All major wars, we're in this battle, this fight, but it took allies.
Yeah.
And so understand that to those folks that says just don't want to stand on the sidelines. It takes willing foot soldiers, willing people to supply those foot soldiers with the funding and the ammunition, and then all becoming allies. We can win this. This is not something that's unwinnable, but we actually have to take charge.
Yes.
So thanks a lot, Steve, and thanks a lot,
Of course.
Todd. And Leonard, thank you for listening to me drone on like I always do.
Thank you very much.
Without you,
but in true fairness, and I'm going to take Stephen's role here. At the end of every show, we give. I'll let Stephen finish it, but we're not letting you off the hook just yet.
Okay.
I mean, that was a pretty good advice. But so to end every episode, we like to ask for a piece of alpha from our guests. So that's your best piece of advice. It can be fishing, life advice, whatever you want to give. But for both of you, what's your best piece of advice that you can give to anyone tuning in right now?
I'm just going to use 2 words. Get involved.
Leonard?
For me, I'd like to defer to the comment a while ago about the offense, defense, the Oregon Anglers Alliance. That was one of our first conversations. We're always on defense. We only can react, not act. We need to start acting and not just reacting. So, it's not huge, but it's something. These ODFW commission meetings that happen once a month, they have a little thing called public forum. It's pretty easy. You only get 3 minutes, but you can line up there and make a statement, and it lets them know the public is listening. For anybody who would like to take the time to do that or understands that, you sign up for it. The directions are all online. There's a meeting this Friday, in fact. You have to sign up 48 hours ahead of time and give your 3 minutes of fame, we call it. But that has an impact because those people that oppose everything that we are trying to do are there a lot more than we are. And hence we have to react to all that stuff. So that's one way to act.
Todd?
I like it. Mine, super simple. I just got home, super tired. Take your family fishing. Go get outside. Just something. Get outdoors and just look around. I know it's hard right now because of the smoke in a lot of our areas, but the second that it clears up and you can get out there, just get out there. And because it's hunting season, I'm going to segue into this. Just because you didn't draw your coveted deer or elk tag in your area, pick up a camera. Pick up a camera and go give yourself that experience of don't let not drawing a tag stop you from going on your adventure. Get out there and do it. Even if you can just take a picture of him or her, whatever your target species is, still get out there and do it. Because, with the tags are harder and harder to get, don't let that be a deterrent from enjoying the outdoors. So, and you get to keep better tabs on your animals. In all honesty, you're going to draw the tag once and, some year. And so, yeah, that's what I have to say is get outdoors.
Fantail pigeon season opens this week, and those are unlimited tags over the counter.
Oh, and great eating. I love pigeons. It's yeah, I like pigeons.
Mine to end the evening is just share what you're passionate and knowledgeable about with people. You can do that in person. You can do that social media, writing, video, however you best want to do it. But you never know whose life you're going to change. All it takes, you can say the same thing 10 times, and all of a sudden, one time they'll hear it. Just keep repeating what you're passionate and knowledgeable about. And then before we end the show, Leonard, where can people find more information on the Oregon Anglers Alliance?
OregonAnglersAlliance.org. That's our website address, or you can email us at OregonAnglersAlliance@outlook.com.
Perfect. And then to become a member, just to the
email
website?
Email us, give us your contact information. If you're part of an organization, let us know how many is in your organization. And like I say, membership is free. You'll get on our general mailing list, which we try not to overburden people with too many emails. To that, there might be 1 or 2 a month to go out. But if you want to get more involved in the organizing, we are always looking for more help, more administrators. People are passionate, and we're getting quite a force. So then you'll get more emails if you get directly hooked up with our board officers and some of our committees. We've got so many things to do, and we'd love to have anybody that's passionate about it, especially Todd there, since I just met Todd.
I'm home now, man. It's I got to tell, I do have a couple months that it's really hard to get a hold of me, but we got to eat, and so but yeah, I'm really excited. Me and Steve were just talking today, and we're going to sit down and get a calendar together of how this looks, moving forward. And so yeah, you'll be seeing a lot more of me now. So
great.
Yeah,
That's a good thing.
100%.
Looking forward to getting to know both of you better.
Yeah, you guys as well. And we both really appreciate your time coming on tonight and having the conversations. We appreciate everybody that tuned in tonight, taking their time as well. Hopefully learned a little bit from the conversations that we had. And with that, guys, have a good night. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Good night.
Are we done?
Yeah.